Dear Fox News and dear CNN, it is all right to have opinions, but it is not all right to offensively prevent people from reporting actual sequence shifts and from reporting uses of switching subjects so they can stack on more fabricated audio and video. Now, this is interbranch, but is simultaneously the roles with predicate acts with the campuses, intercities, and with the locations next to them through time. They didn't realize themselves as victim predators. See, this is with the phones and my town's police chief and his family and his extended family, per them, involved with them forging, switching names, involved with rape threats, switching names, forging names, with the rape threats from the New Britain Superior Court website, Facebook page, since before the principal child offender. Well, court had confessed and demonstrated there are more names involved with that. And like a Michael Levine. Now, so for example, the courts aren't supposed to make allegations. The police aren't supposed to make allegations that are untrue. And they're supposed to allow people, but they've been doing that. That's the standard precedence, not by accident. Because that was worse than that is. Because that is being and having been used remotely. Then they had the high light progressions, not by accident, right there simultaneously, roles with a vertical and horizontal. Database is oriented. Part of a grader is exploited off campuses. But if of a grader, like with sequence shifts, everyone had a different teacher, but you're in the same grade. This exploits it. There are further campuses in town involved with uses of their identity of the ground. Not just the logistics, the identity of the ground, the phenomena that they're exploiting, where they prevent people from responding properly to juxtapose nature of organized crime that our interbranch family members in that foreign private and policing and overt criminal enterprises and private criminal enterprises originally still for self-value themselves, even though they're not real. Because we're in a value nature systems. We're in value nature systems, all technically ulterior from the one that causes positive value nature progressions, action nature's evolution. Evolution science is about 5 identities of truth. Raising / rising. You're telling high. See, they took high, they made it like it's something good. Make it sound like, they took that high because this is about the high, the top of the letters, the heights when you learn the letters. Lowercase letters stay below the line, exception as T. Because that is where they are all exception nature, because they share an identity, as the notes do, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, within as the value of the alphabet, individually grouped and together. So the 7 notes of music have an identity of relationship to themselves and have the value of that as an identity of volume, non-distinctly at the same time, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously further, where and how we are a semi-nature relationship to its value progression. See, computers, rather than being, no one knows how to speak about them because they take it as everyone took everything as a business. As value nature systems, science is abridged. As victims, because there was nothing other. People were speaking for positive and negative anyway. So in other words, rather than speaking about the logistics and the identity of the ground, locations, uses, intercities, not just with the campus I went to, but it's involved with wire crimes now, and with uses of Facebook pages, intercities, where they're pretending passions and emotions, because we have the judges, and we have the executive branch, former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his defending capacities. See, everyone doesn't know how to respond because the judicial branch and the executive branch and political families in Washington, D.C., World Trade Center tied syntax, relationships to where and how. Precedence of statute is recorded with being and having been influenced by how they had to hide life progressions, uses of investigators, identities of the law, and collusion with the worst things that happen to be people and between people, and everyone not realizing, because that was used remotely too. And then there's still, this is a method /S of identity theft frauds and of uses of roles with that effectively maintain self-value, effectively maintain that through what knew that those behind witch trials trying to explain that, even their explanations, what they believe it might be about. I heard drugs somewhere. How could you not attach that to the breaching method applied, predicate acts, delivery system method roles with slavery, colored with the law? That which sustained tactically, sickly, distinctly, tactically, criminally foreign influence to education and of means to it, and of where and how it's the sophistication and everyone non-sophistication is being used per their self-value roles with that archetypal criminal enterprise. The devil, most probably, for example, more probably than that which they have conceived formally by the people, by the language of the law, the syntax of the law, regarding who's got right to religious rights, who's speaking with physical delusions, who's not. Math is being taught with physical delusions. It's the value of math. For example, binary is not about it is a truth, it is about zeros and ones. But it is more truth that it is about positive or negative. And it is more true than that it is about identities, identity of value progression, its identity of relationship to itself and the value of that as a trinity. So I'm not even an electrician, a circuit is a trinity. The ground, the plug is a trinity. A grounded plug. The ground has a distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous relationship to our value as it, not as it, and only as it. Where anything that can be generated is one identity of value progression and generation of itself. Anything that is discernible per pantheism. I'm a pantheist who believes that Muhammad was the last messenger, and that Jesus Christ also was about and is about a predicate acts delivery system method that already had forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded roles with tactically, criminally foreign influenced reception and fact-cheaping nature uses of sciences, therefore of all identity of the ground locations. And this is where worse was already using all identity of the ground locations without anyone realizing it. For the fact-cheaping nature, the premises, treatments, and defenses of that. For the identity theft, frauds, roles, self-valued. Everyone to be blaming other things, others themselves, for the real causes of negative value, nature, progressions, action, natures, which is the science, /s of positive /s. And this, I'm not even a lawyer. It is recorded clear as day evidence lawyers since founding, how pounding drums, how outside of courts there were inclusion, for example, with all this too. Hundreds of nations at once. People want to debate about things. They want to put a theater like people can go back and forth with issues. They're separating subjects so they can use truths to lie, and they're fabricating truths. And they have physical delusions while they are rules, crimes, predators, originally and still. All identity is a law in each modern nation. Otherwise, science would have revealed, for example, well, across the board of nations, since before cars, the infrastructure itself, all identity, the ground locations, the pathology of it was forced as that predicate acts delivery system method. The fact, cheapening nature, slavery of every person, every identity, the ground location. Now we have roads paved, but they just fit between those houses. This is where George Washington had to come to, but right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War, to meet the French general, to secure the help, to do what no one would have done unless they had to be counter-extorted. Everyone was extorted and worse. And some people would say, oh, but my opinion, they're not extorted. They wanted the slavery or whatever. See, those opinions, they want to break down conversations. And while first, me and people tried to report sequence shifts, natures of identity, thefts, frauds. See, they need to have problems between us because of how each of the branches and the foreign police here and there, they were already using collusion with identity ground locations. Peace that is contrast to war, that, for example, they share as a physical delusion. Where and how it counts. Where and how humanity counts. Where and how we are fact-cheaping nature. Where and how we are value. Increasingly, it is self-valued by everyone that we don't speak about how we are valued by. That native system that reveals evolution's fruits and gifts. That native system, not because it was writ by the law, things are positive or negative, and then they are further positive or negative. They could be creative, criminal, insidiousness nature. We don't have to be lawyers to understand how standing criminal insidious natures like wrongdoers and like wrongdoing itself was on and predicate acts roles themselves, sequence shifts roles, identity theft frauds on a mass scale were involved with that which employed that sustained. Not one has trained. People say, oh, divide and conquer. Yeah, that makes that self-value because of the self-value criminal insidious natures of never having been liberated. Identity, the ground, locations, areas, and states. American history, you could know more about George Washington than me. You could know more about James Madison than me. But I read the right things. I used correlation. They didn't have free speech. They had to leave slavery in the North, sickly here in Wethersfield, between New York and Boston, between New York and Massachusetts. The Boston Tea Party. All that wouldn't have unfolded if it wasn't for those behind. James Madison's native plan, native dream. Not more than native hope and plan and value. But that's a value increasingly valued, his identity remembered through and with influences, criminally foreign influence takes on him that were forced on by all, because everyone has to go back home at the end of the night. And because there was no unity, that wasn't because of how they had that entrenched, what was actually having been entrenched, and how it was actually being exploited, and what it was actually being exploited for. It was truths. It was through truths, a whole bunch of truth things it was exploited for. But there was one that was using and is using all identity ground locations. So they time people asking questions. They pretend like they're legitimately investigators just in everyday life for one of their family members. Simultaneously, they're coaching people to fabricate things. They're fabricating audio and video interbranch, but with other nations. Then the World Trade Center happened. Hartford courts and the Britain courts were before the Trade Center attack. They were recorded, confessed, and demonstrated with 3 cities, more than 3 cities, schools involved with them, with military families, and with judges and people that worked for them and their families, and with campuses involved with predicate acts with them on their locations, and these are people involved with the depositions of former director of the FBI and his co-defendants that are also recorded, 3 of them involved with predicate acts against me and uses of that, and a method /S by that. They use the method of separating subjects while they stack names and name switching and names forging. Since I was a kid, they wouldn't put anything in writing. The same people that were tied to the same campus /S. Now they attach me to fake conversations with people I never saw on my grammar school campus in my life, who confessed about things in middle school. Made it look like I know them. Like, in other words, they make fake sides of correlation nature. They're making exploitations of juxtaposed natures of bad things on each age, self-value. Not by accident rolls with what is actually manifest with statistics, yeah. Each sign, each identity ground location use. Originally still, these are not means that can be afforded and then defended, but by people that need to hide lie progressions and keep those voices shut when they force the wrong outcomes, trick, hurt, persuade, and our same thing. I'm persuaded on them. It is as clear as day that integrity never one time spoke for the nature of the law. They have fake sides. They have both political parties and alternatives in collusion, where and how they're preventing people from peaceful means to counter sick people, like with rape threats and with other natures of child abuses on off the child offender campuses since before that, and confessed by the principal child offender more things and name, like a Mike Levine, or that was. Now there are other names, so I shouldn't have to be online asking names. They use their recorded, confess, demonstrated. They fabricate audio and video on the Wethersfield Police Department. Pretend I had a conversation. Pretend put me in quotes with an older Mendez police brother, who was recorded and involved. In other words, these are identity theft, frauds, clicks, and police brothers like Eric Mendez also on off Fox Connecticut News, involved with predicate acts with his judge, with his brother, on off campuses with little kids, and with doctors with child sex offenders, with people on the child offender registry, involved with predicate acts with them of other juxtaposed natures and uses of them, also for how they are involved with the vertical and horizontal databases, predicate acts, intercities that were timed. So people that were timed, like there's a Joe Aiello involved with a former Mayor Gold, and a whole bunch of people tied to forensics locations involved with predicate acts with their patients and criminals, and with the principal child offender, and with his campus. Now, there were judges and prosecutors also with their kids. They were faking things about me and roles with other people that did that when they were kids. There was a whole bunch of people on off CCSU and on off like that involved with little kids. They've been abusing little kids through time with police forms, state police, their family members, people that have insights into whatever's Washington. There are a whole bunch of ways. Washington D.C. and World Trade Center. It has also ties to speech teachers I had in high school. I never had a personal conversation with either one of them. It's got those. They have a number of roles with this method /S of forcing everyone to speak through others, and of preventing writing, and of roles with what I recorded before that, and since that they broke. They did worse than what they were pretending. So this is also why and how they separate subjects. This is also the same way they get people to shop and say, well, we're going to do this too. Because they make everything worse than it is. And they're making things up against complete strangers. I mean, completely innocent people. So, because they're not legitimately. They go, oh, we want to debate and sue us. That's why they have to pick one name in sequence. They're recorded, confessed, demonstrated also. Same people involved leading up to the World Trade Center in that context criminally involved from Connecticut courts, Hartford courts, Hartford military, West Hartford military, New Britain military, Wethersfield military are involved with predicate acts leading with locations like next to West Farms Mall, identity theft frauds, sequence shifts, fabricating audio and video with locations tied to courts that have been fabricating audio and video. They had that with other nations that are involved with the interbranch family members. Then they pretend people make allegations. They have doctors that have been faking conversations with people. These are people since before the World Trade Center attack that involved, hiding with it. That's all that is tied to syntax-wise and stuff like that. What was already long yet being and having been used. Oh, but we didn't drive the plane into the towers. Yeah, but you guys are 6 roles with 6 things here, and that's kept at self-value. We have the other nations like Kuwait, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with deans that are victims, but then they make them predators. They make everyone's family members, their extended family members. There are roles with identity ground locations, like prisons, like religious locations. There's a mosque on the mosques have something to do with these people involved, like with Officer Jerry Miller, recorded, confessed, demonstrated also with Joe Aiello, who has a business next to, I don't know if it's still there, next to Buckley High School in Hartford. Now, I never had a class with Joe Aiello or the Michael Kerr or Jerry Kerr, his older brother, or his father. But these are also people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with Central Connecticut State University, involved intercities and with stuff they ducking behind with identity ground locations, like with 2-Rod Highway, involved with them with wire crimes and with falsified police reports roles, sequence shifts, identity thefts and frauds, uses of investigations and of investigators in collusion with overt criminal kids involved with overt criminal enterprises, not just because they tell them to pretend that. There are a whole bunch of ways they're recorded and involved with predicate acts, with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and with school databases. Dozens of people from Central Connecticut State University in New Britain are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with dozens of people from Wethersfield, Connecticut, interbranch and tied to them, and military and medical people involved intercities, interstates, involved with predicate acts, connected. So they're forging names and switching names. And they have various police forms that use crime methods that contain uses of those methods too, but where they pretend they made police mistakes with their police reports, and then they switch the officers' names and they switch the departments. So, and they bring other people around the people into the conversations that are faked. So, as a method to control over people's sensibilities. And while they're preventing mandated law. So you guys had, so America, please help me get heard. Because the news media and the online platforms are involved with collusion with uses of our behavior in relationship to the roles with database, organized crime method that was since before computers. Roles with identity thefts and frauds and uses of that. Now these are private people associated with the interbranch also, and our overt criminal enterprises, and the witness protection program stewards also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with the house / SMI Street. That Weathersfield Police recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed is involved with their threats over the past 4 months with switching names, then playing stupid, switching subjects. I'm still waiting for a response in writing for how they wouldn't give me, they have all different narratives about falsified police reports. They have a Phil Cololo also involved with these Mendez police with identity theft, frauds, and falsified police reports roles. Also per Bob Chase, also involved with predicate acts with courts, if wrongdoing and such like that, and predicate acts. So, but everyone's preventing writing, and they have physical delusions. Now these are people involved with their patients and criminals before they were caught, and since. So, we have to have the judges' names, because they've been sequence shifting. They use crime methods too, where they speak things into records that are fake, as them fabricating audio and video. When I was a kid, as the people involved with New Britain Superior Court now, that are involved with dozens of natures of predicate acts and roles with identity thefts and frauds, and uses of child campuses, and their roles with uses of investigators, interbranch family members, like a Debbie Gold. She's involved with sequence shifts. She's a sick girl, and there's a Lee Gold, their kids, whatever. I don't know who they're married to. I never had anything to do with them, but Joe Aiello is involved with them, with the judges and the prosecutors, personally criminally involved with him and people tied to him, like a Joe DeMoro and like this Kerr family. He said, he admitted on Facebook. Now even if that wasn't him, that was one of the people I barely ever saw in that John Maiano and a Joe DeMoro. Were recorded, also involved with the prosecutors and judges criminally involved with the predicate acts on my street, and with the officers forging and switching names, and their roles also recorded with a Scalora family, with recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles with predicate acts with people on off Central Connecticut State University, and with New Manhattan, New York, and with the World Trade Center, and with her relatives involved with Weathersfield Police and her. And intercities with Central Connecticut State University and child campuses, that they have roles with predicate acts and databases, identity thefts and frauds, exploitations of exceptions and exception nature. That they said that, in other words, when we get into what is actually recorded, but you have to follow mandated law. You guys are making allegations with locations about people who ask you to fix. WFSB fabricated me to fake ties to doctors as a kid and as an adult, where I was in the presence of doctors as an adult, but I was never had anything to do with them. And when I was a kid, I never had anything to do with doctors. These are some sick people with medicines crimes and drugs crimes with kids that are also that were also timed as roles with uses of identity ground locations of body dumping spots and of untimely deaths, one on the campus of Trinity College, recorded and involved with all this other stuff with judges, prosecutors, interbranch family members, involved with investigators, with my name, and knowing where I'm going to walk, that are criminally involved. Like, in other words, I never had a conversation in my life with a Joshua Stryker. There's a woman that was a student at Trinity College, involved with them with predicate acts, and with a Oliveri family, also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, involved with predicate acts with people that are also with houses on that street and with businesses on that street that are involved with the intelligence community. And with fire departments, how they were involved with fire departments, intercities, and with the intercampuses part of it. But there's this right back to all identity ground locations. Knows that uses everyone's names. But then we have to use that to discern what is also using this, which is as clear as day. This is why no one uses what is actually capable of the short words and of correlation, where and how that breaching method, that forced slavery, is not allowed to be talked about it. And the people that don't allow that do little games, and then they pretend that's insensitive. These are behavior games. These are where we have sick black and white leaders. That's why we have forsaken locations like New York City, urban areas throughout the world, suburban areas, let alone. So their solution is to further that breaching method. Level it out. What is unacceptable to integrity in the first place, so let integrity speak. They're using truths for lies. It is truth that they can use what people report for information. Now, see, there were also the uses of the locations next to WFSB and next to Fox Connecticut News. They're also using the crime methods of pretending, we're just erasing clock. We have the news. Then what do they say? That's so they have roles further with more then and now with the Principal Child Defenders Campus and with other campuses. And this is worse than extortion because these are intercampuses. There are teachers associated with Rocky Hill High School and Rocky Hill schools, and people with Cromwell, also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, involved with this, and with medical people, foreign and domestic, that are on and off campuses, furthering life progressions and uses of them. So we have worse than criminal incompetence that speaks for things like integrity. That speaks for things like litigation. They want, we had them backed into, like the same way those forsaken kids get backed into those overt criminal enterprises. They keep them in collusion, kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts, finite, active, progressive lies, and use roles with uses of them. Then they make opinions to defend themselves. That's life, We're in the same trap since before cars. James Madison's identity is increasingly self-valued, being and having been stolen right in our faces. So they could pretend they don't understand what Marbury versus Madison means, that real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice. So they have to pretend more and more that pomp and impressions of adulthood or whatever that is as what is impressions of justice. I could be drunk, high and riding a tricycle, and I could speak about the law better than it has ever been spoken. I'm not even a lawyer. You have to follow mandated law. You have to be able to counter this that uses clear as day when you see all identity ground locations, even religious locations. Then they use the sense of, you can't even ask people online. The courts are not supposed to allow allegations. See, we have people calling the police too, because then they make overall allegations against people. They say, that's that person. Then they keep doing that. And that is being and having been exploited by a whole bunch of things that are known and not realized. But there's also worse than that not realized, where there is complete possession over one identity of completely invisible, but one way. There are distinct identities of the invisible but still discernible, and English was revealed to teach this, by and as an identity of sophistication, by and as the human value/value nature, the value/value progression. We are, where that slash is an increasing identity of volume, where now its volume will only stay an increasing identity of volume. We can't help but be temporary positive. A piece of us can't help but be temporary lasting positive. That's why more and more, the rest of our quality of diffusion, we should not ignore it, not native pure. So the same way that if a computer is turned off, then it can only remember things with the CPU. All the resources and the memory of the microchips, all that stuff is gone. The USB. So, for example, people go home each day. Everyone has blamed on other things other than themselves, and then they defended that and self-value that. The real causes of the negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, like the shootings in Hartford, Connecticut. Because they left out how they have a sustained victimhood. Now the same people involved with that they don't realize. The victims and the predators. We have ones from Wethersfield, interbranch through time, inter-private, involved leading up to the World Trade Center, in it and since. In context, they don't have the right to, not be sued, to interbranch individually, personally, and their family members and everyone's neighbors, per how this works. Jerks. So, follow mandated law. They just make allegations against people outside of courts, with the media making fabricated audio at the same time. I mean, fabricated things. And they have the people who answer the phones for them. They have the people who answer the internet for them. Involved with the bad things, all juxtaposed. And the method /S, where they pretend the impression of justice. They pretend that's what they think justice is. Or whatever. They also have physical delusions. So who knows what they're thinking. But we have to have them fix the fabricated audio and video. They also recorded, confirmed, it is recorded how they played softball together. A bunch of times. The news media. It is involved with them with on-off Fox Connecticut News. And on off WFSB, they have off their locations predicate acts roles also. I don't know why I have to write a map to have someone to respond to in writing. The courts are recorded, confessed, and demonstrated with the various police forms, personally criminally involved with them. See, former director of the FBI, he has co-defendants that had kids that were also recorded and involved with the Wethersfield police when they were kids with predicate acts, as the ones like the Mendez police on off Fox Connecticut rolls with their predicate acts, and Hartford, Connecticut, and on off Wethersfield police. Then they recorded simultaneously. They pretend that's personal when you say that. Meanwhile, they're making allegations against people and fabricating things with people in collusion with all kinds of bad things. Even the Witness Protection Program stewards recorded, confessed. There's Officer Jerry Miller, who said that the Kerr family, they're one of the families, and with the DeMorrow family, involved with various overt criminal enterprises and with predicate acts, with identity theft frauds, with judges and prosecutors that have roles with identity thefts and frauds with people on all sides of the high schools and private school kids that come in and have roles with narratives where they don't give anyone writing. I never was suspended or anything. Everyone hid from what is actually recorded because they had their kids. involved with this game between where you're not people that aren't in your class, and then they put exceptions, so they could say, "Oh, well, you know them. I don't know these people." In other words, and the people I do know, I only know there's a pattern of people that approached me in life, different way, whatever like that. They have connections in the narratives, and personally, with the people involved with predicate acts on off Trinity College, on off CCSU. Now officers forging and switching names, attaching me as switching the arresting officers' names with a fake arresting officer as one of the ones who did this with the judges and prosecutors personally criminally involved with the campuses, and the former director of the FBI. One of the so. In a 2006 case in district court case in Connecticut, leading up to that and leading up to leading up to another part of a case / a different thing. In the World Trade Center attack context, right before that, since before the World Trade Center attack in context, and right in that context, people involved with that and the military, they were involved with predicate acts, with investigators, investigations, identity ground, locations uses. They don't even know the extent of it. They're just evidence racketeering natures. American history, that's evidence. There were evidence racketeering natures pretending they were justice. And that was still entrenched. That's why they were still doing it. That's why the counters to that which had slavery in the North and in the South sickly distinctly had to come through the North that had it too. Because the counters to that were still contained. Not one has trained. Follow mandated law. And please, someone help me get heard. And YouTube. So these are police forums. There are other agencies. And their family members also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated on Facebook. And it's real in other ways anyway. In other words, they use the crime method of pretending people are going to go down, that people don't want to be cooperative with the police, when they just fabricate audio and video. I'm not going to go down there. I didn't even try to make it. He put me in fake quotes. The other people were doing that with the same prosecutors and judges. That kid was involved with sequence shifts, wire crimes, and people rolls with it when I was a kid. People on my street that are involved over the past 4 months with police with the name Sullivan. That's also a name that was recorded, confessed, and demonstrated. A whole bunch of people with the name Sullivan involved with forging names and switching names that Wethersfield police have, while they switch subjects and fabricate audio and video. With the other police forms and with their own and with their family members, wire crime acts and methods, and rolls with that in the past. Now there's a Joshua Stryker and people at Trinity College and CCSU that are recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with predicate acts with people all along Griswold Street and all along Route 3, and with the uses of the corners of it, where they have my name involved. And I don't know them. And in other words, the ones I know, they sought me out to make confessions tied to that. They say, "Oh, that's only context I know them in." And then there is recorded exploitations of that. Now I shouldn't have to explain things to people. I should be able to have a response to the threats and recorded abuses of the kids and uses of their own to hide their life aggressions. And with the other countries in here, we're not going to let that go. See, they want us to let that go, so they're making it hard and impossible for leaders to have integrity, while they force them to pretend other anyway. That's evidence. No one spoke for American history correctly. And because everyone's either going to afford... It's all right, people have opinions what caused that sick things and rolls with it. Don't stay there and keep playing that game. You you have no experts. There is a database oriented, enter everything. This is an identity, the ground, locations, all involved with it. I know exactly how it works, and you can observe how it works. But you have to help people force the perfect world's voice to be used. It's science. The science of evolution. The science of Santa's fruits and gifts. Santa Claus. The St. Nicholas, per Wikipedia, was recruited by the church to help them figure out how they were going to defend the nature of the law. No, all identity, the ground, locations were already tactically, criminally, foreign influence, forced self-value roles, or you're hurt. Same thing here and there. Same thing in England before England was formerly the known as the one of the colonizers of Native Americans and of colonists here. They were already colonized by what is off the records. They were already, those other countries that fought with England, Spain, France, that get along with them. Everyone wasn't fathoming how archetypal criminal enterprises knew that if it could trick, hurt, persuade countries individually grouped in together into defending tactically ulterior from the nature of the sciences, that nature of value progression that is native pure, that is the identity of evolution, the identity of value progression, that inventions work or not in relationship to it, into its identity of relationship to itself and the value of that increasingly. And further, inventions are positive or negative in relationship to that. So if American history was understood, we would understand what criminal insidiousness nature is. Criminal insidiousness is. We would understand what criminal insidiousness nature is. See, the sciences are abridged, and they have physical delusions. And this breaching method knew that those kind of victims like that would value how they know. And our rules crimes predators. And our logic, our identities of logic, they can't defend themselves and afford civility with locations and areas. And they need to pretend others simultaneously know. So they have tactically, criminally foreign influence uses of words / values like behavior. For example, the experts. So we have this database method to overcome, but we have to overcome where and how it was exploited with all identity ground locations, because it knew that and how it would have them needed to keep sequence roles with those illusions, with uses of those illusions. Then they would have to pretend not to realize where and how they are involved with investigators, and their identity, the ground locations like campuses that train them, and like the forensic locations, the places that they're employed privately, where and how they have connections, and where and how that is used remotely, and having been used remotely, and where and how they had to hide live progressions tied to that too. So this fit them means to. Then they had to hide that. So all precedents and statutes are recorded still tactically, criminally, foreign influence, delusions wrought, and pretending others simultaneously. And that can't defend that and pretend other as that and afford to have the value of what is simultaneous to computers discerned. So it has to obfuscate it. Has to make someone be a complete expert on computers just to say something, a simple thing that is true, that they're going to deny it anyway. What is simultaneous is the most important thing to everything. It is that identity of value progression that is not only what inventions work or not in relation to it, they are positive or not in relation to it, further In other words, there can be positive nature, there can be criminal insidiousness natures of positive. And that's what we're dealing with. Criminal insidiousness natures of positive premises treatments. And of negative. They're discrediting the logic that reveals evolution's fruits and gifts and Santa's too. So to defend the nature of the law, you have to counter complete possession over each identity ground locations, fact cheaping nature styles, conviction natures, opinion nature, offensively preventing the logic that is not working with physical delusions, not working with what other people said, not working with what databases said, not working with people that stack that and exploit that. That's real. So I need a response for the school. Then they bring other people into the conversation that don't even know about the stuff, to as a method to hide when that where and how the interbranch were are caught, and inter-religious spots, the sensibility of everyone, where and how agencies and courts, members and leaders that are corrupt. They made/make use of victim predators pretending other with them. Everyone in styles of defenses of that, where and how it is relevant for where and how it is manifest, and where and how that is prevented. So CNN, please fix WFSB's fabricated audio and video. Please get the a response for all the names that they brought up with the Wethersfield campuses and with the elections locations. Wethersfield town offices, not just the town offices critically, but it's also religious spots. And the names forging and switching roles with the people, and as the people involved also with predicate acts on off Trinity College, CCSU, and UConn, and privately with private lawyers. We have lawyers of Harvard Hospital privately criminally involved. We need to get them onto paper. We need to get those judges onto paper in one sequence. Like ones involved with Judge Killian, also involved with rape threats with people and fabricating audio and video onto tape recordings, taping himself, fabricating audio sequence with doctors involved with drugs, crimes, medicines, crimes with him, with the Leahy family before them, and involved also with them, with prosecutors from other courts and judges from other courts, involved with state's attorneys, uses of them remotely. So this is relevant because this is through time. This is how they have, grammar school, exception nature tied to that. Before that, whatever. Middle school, high school, and college. And exception nature would be like fire campuses, private database relationships simultaneously, their members, identity ground locations. Remember, kept needing to hide live progression simultaneously. Where and how the vertical or horizontal means live progressions from the vertical. Recorded crime method roles, method/S roles. It's way worse than crimes, way worse than war crimes. Simple. It's overt/insidious. It's tied to where and how that which is overt/insidious in the nature and opinions of people that blame on other things other than themselves, and or deny the impositions caused by the laws that were breaching method employed and left entrenched, like slavery. See, we have to deal with this as a quality of fact cheaping nature. That's not some theater looking adult. And we could do this here. So I need people back me. I'll show you how recorded, confessed, and demonstrated. The private businesses online, they're being coached to this. They're being forced, tricked, persuaded to by the interbranch because they were already used remotely. They don't know how to speak. They don't know how to litigate as anything as predators in self-valuing roles, where and how each identity, the ground location, where and how we are our value/value progression. They were our roles exploiting that with investigators, and foreign and collusion, private and collusion. Methods where they put fake sides of correlation nature. It's alright, people want to make opinions about what they perceived and stuff like that. Put stuff on paper. Because the only thing it's the people that were with locations, fabricating audio and video with their families, people tied to their families. Everyone, then they self-value when they hear when other people were doing that. That's not by accident. It is exploited. It is roles where it's inter-campuses, intra-campuses, and involved with the subject, and where and how and why the predicate act of the law and the predicate of English are increasing identities of value in relationship to the identity they share, that the sciences share. See, criminal and seditious nature of positive show that where and how. Real positive was his being and having been exploited. And that values, needs a whole bunch of victims that that can only be fake positive. And needs to blame the causes of it on other things other than self, needs to self-value roles, using it to shield what is, preventing mandated laws, fruits and gifts, evolutions, sciences. It's pretending it's about science anyway, offensively.